All right, and we are back. And today we're back with episode 5 of the Christian Denominations Family Tree series. This one is about Baptists and Methodists. So this will be fun because this is the one that, out of these two, I felt like I would have said before this series started that I probably knew the most about them. But before the video even starts, I'm going to go on a limb and say I probably know nothing about them for real. I know what was like told to me in very small chunks as a child in a non-denominational church. So we weren't even huge on like, I don't know. I don't even feel like we really went through the entire Bible page by page. We just kind of like, you know, went through certain parts of it just so the preacher at that moment can kind of get to the point of that week's like lesson for the congregation. So this will be a fun one. I'm going to learn a lot today, guys. Guys, please remember, if you're watching this video, also check out UsefulCharts video. Go to his channel, like his page, comment on his videos, subscribe, let him know that I sent you, and if you're coming there, or you're coming here from there, I will say, then also remember, like this video, comment on this video and all the other videos, subscribe. That's a good thing there, subscribing. And also, if you are commenting, comment down your favorite symbol, because that's one of my favorite things to do with this series is to look at the symbols and say which ones I like the most. And you guys, I want you guys to do the same. Have a little fun with this. It's Sunday, guys. Enjoy yourselves. Now, with that being said, remember, here's the serious part. If you don't like, comment, or subscribe to this video, YouTube will come through that door, and they will. Christian Denominations Family Tree Series, Episode 5, Baptists and Methodists.
Hi, this is Matt Baker. Welcome to Episode 5 in my series on Christian denominations. Today, I'll mostly be talking about the Baptists and the Methodists, two groups that are closely connected to a period of religious change known as the First Great Awakening. There were actually at least 3 Great Awakenings in total, all of which took place primarily in the English-speaking world. I'll be covering the second one in Episode 6 and the third one in Episode 7. So basically, the next 3 episodes of this series will be focused on the 3 Great Awakenings and the various denominations that came out of them. Oh, wow. And once again, I want to shout out Joshua from the YouTube channel Ready to Harvest. I relied heavily on him for this episode in particular because he happens to be a Baptist himself. However, he's also produced his own video about the Baptists, which I recommend that you watch after this one, as
guys, I love Ready to Harvest videos, and I want to do more of them, but, I need you guys to hit that like goal, please. I want 15 likes by next Sunday so I can get another Ready to Harvest video, or else, I don't know. I guess I'm just going to have to wait until this video series is done before I can get into it. But then after this video series, I have to learn about the Jewish denominations. So guys, come on, hit that like goal. It's going to really push all this towards where we need to go. 15 likes. That's 1, 2, 3. That's 5 times 3. I don't know why I did it like that, but there it is.
He does a good job at breaking down all the various different types of Baptists, of which there are many.
Hey, he's got a great intro, guys. It's really good. It's straight to the point.
As usual, let me begin by pointing out a few changes that I've made to the chart since last time. If you've watched the previous episodes, you'll know that I've been building this chart as I go, and that sometimes I incorporate suggestions from comments. Well, one thing that several people wanted was an Others section, so I went ahead and added one at the bottom. However, I also added a few other sections as well. For example, not all Lutherans belong to the Lutheran World Federation, but rather than include those Lutherans at the bottom, I included them here as other Lutherans. Likewise, I added other Pentecostals next to the Assemblies of God in order to make it clear just how many Pentecostals there are in the world, even though most of them do not belong to a single denomination or ecumenical organization. In fact,
Okay.
if all the Pentecostals were to create a worldwide communion, they would rank above the Eastern Orthodox Church as the second largest Christian
Oh,
communion
wow.
in the world. Finally,
So they would be larger. They're just not like super organized, is what I'm guessing here. Is what I'm interpreting from this. Like they're not like a part of one organized thing. They're more just like independent places, but there's a lot of them. That's cool.
I also added other Baptists, as only about half of the Baptists worldwide belong to the Baptist World Alliance. Again, if all the Baptists in the world did unite, they'd be much higher on the list, coming in just above the Anglicans.
Come on, Baptists. Let's unite this, guys. I'm pretty sure I would be in the other Baptist category. So you guys know how I stand on things like this. Unite.
Now, the reason why there is no other Methodists section and no other Reformed section is because in these two cases, virtually all Methodists belong to the Methodist World Council, and virtually all Reformed churches belong to the World Council of Reformed Churches.
Virtually.
So there's not really any other Methodists or other Reformed to mention. There are other Anglicans, but at least for now, they number less than 1 million. So I opted not to show them since on this infographic, each church symbol is supposed to represent around 10 million members. Okay, there were some comments about the world map as well. For example, several people pointed out that Lebanon should be yellow, since that country is more than 10% Christian and Catholicism is the dominant type there. So, although it's hard to see, Lebanon is now yellow. Germany and Australia were mentioned as well, since both of those countries are split around 50-50 between Catholics and Protestants, with Catholics starting to take the edge in both places. But I'm going to do a bit more research into the most recent stats before making a final decision. In the family tree section, there's just one thing to point out. Many people requested that the Shakers be added, so I've gone ahead and done that. Their founder was an early Quaker, so I've shown them as splitting off before the other major Quaker groups were formed. Okay, let's now look at the Baptists. The Baptists, along with the Quakers and the Congregationalists, were among the many English separatist groups that left the Church of England in the 1600s. However, as I mentioned last time, most of the other groups, such as the Diggers, Enthusiasts, Ranters, Seekers, and Muggletonians, have since gone extinct.
Muggletonians? Man, I thought Harry Potter was fictional.
The Quakers have always been a relatively small group, and the Congregationalists, although once a large group, are today relatively small, meaning that it's mostly the Baptists who are the modern-day descendants of the...
Whoa. Hold on. Before we get to this, guys, have we seen these before? Guys, can anybody in the comments let me know if we've seen these symbols before in the previous videos? I do not remember these two. These are some good logos right here. I would say the Church of North India. This one looks a little bit more like a Salvation Army type of symbol right here. So it's cool, but it doesn't just like scream Christianity to me. But this Church of South India, they had something going here. I like what they're doing. This looks like one of those this looks like a church like a church that's like hip, like with the youth, like the guy comes out, he's cool, he's wearing jeans, and just like a regular flannel or something, and he's super cool about it. Yeah, that's the type of church this gives me the vibes of. Yeah, so I just didn't see those before. Maybe I did. I don't know. I don't feel like I commented on those before, but if I did, let me know in the comments. Yeah, let's go.
That it's mostly the Baptists who are the modern-day descendants of the English separatists. The two men usually credited with having started the Baptist movement are John Smith and Thomas Helwys, both former Anglicans. They ended up moving to Holland, where they crossed paths with the Anabaptists and became convinced that Christians should be baptized as adults, not infants. This is why the Baptists are sometimes shown on charts as being an offshoot of the Anabaptists. However, while early interaction did take place, and while they did share one big thing in common, the idea that baptism should be for adults only, or at least older children, the two groups quickly ended up going in very different directions. And thus, I think it's better to see the Baptists as being an offshoot of the Anglicans rather than the Anabaptists.
So from what I am aware of, and obviously I want you guys to comment this in the comment section down below. Baptists are more like, we're not going to baptize you at all until you are ready to make the decision for yourselves, while the Anabaptists are, they baptize you as a baby and then they rebaptize you again as an older adult. And I have saw some comments just, on previous videos, just discussing that. And I will say I'm a little bit more on the fence about the Anabaptist one, just because, again, some of the comments I have read in the section have kind of informed me more that like rebaptizing isn't something that a lot of like Christian groups like practice or believe in, and I can understand that, baptizing twice. Now, as far as like with the regular baptism, I also understand the downsides of that, because if anything happens to a child, you want to make sure they are baptized. So waiting that long could just have a lot of like, it could be pretty detrimental, especially I imagine like the freaking 1700s, like it's a lot more random stuff that could just happen to you on a daily basis. You have to go out and do stuff. You can't just order your food online, and everything just be safe and, secured all the time. So yeah, I can see the dangers in both of those. But also I can see the upsides, of making that choice for yourself versus that choice being put onto you as a baby with like other, Christian groups. So like, I don't know. It's like I see both sides of it. So personally, I don't know what, I'm not going to make a decision about which one is good or bad or anything. I'm not here for that, guys. I'm just saying what I know. Yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. That's my interpretation on it, at least. Let me know if anything I said was incorrect or anything. But I do have one question that I'm sure you guys can answer in the chat. Is getting Christian, like the christening, with the little thing on there for a baby, is that like, how is that related to baptism? Is it close? Is it something that's like, oh, that's different altogether? That's just something that they do as like a little prayer thing for the baby versus a full on baptism. And then, because yeah, I just want to know that, because I just heard about christenings. Like I knew what they were, but I wasn't like 100% sure if that was the same as a baptism. But I know you guys know, so let me know below.
Now, in some Baptist circles, there's actually another hypothesis about Baptist origins. But before I dive into it, I want to point out that many Christian traditions have alternative views on their origins, views that often differ from the more academic narrative that I've been sharing in this series. For example, the Roman Catholic Church sees themselves as being the one true church, going all the way back to the Apostle Peter, who they see as being the first pope. In the Catholic view, everyone else split off from them, including the Eastern Orthodox churches. However, the Eastern Orthodox Church holds the opposite view. They see themselves as being the one true church, and they see the Roman Catholics and Protestants as being misguided offshoots. Even some Anglicans like to see their church as having an origin that predates the Roman Catholic Church. These Anglicans would say that the Church of England can claim an unbroken descent from much earlier Celtic churches that were planted in the 1st century. So my point is that the Baptists are by no means unique when it comes to having an origin story that treats their particular tradition as being special. Anyhow, according to some Baptists, known as landmark Baptists, the Baptist tradition did not start in the 1600s, but rather can be traced all the way back to the 1st century through a series of fringe movements. This chart from the 1931 book, The Trail of Blood, illustrates the idea. At the top, you can see the mainstream churches, including the original state-sponsored church that eventually split into the Greek and Roman branches, with the Roman branch eventually including the various Protestant groups as well. The red dots, which make up a trail of blood, represent congregations of quote-unquote true churches that, according to landmarkism, would have been similar to Baptist churches today. And at the bottom, there's a steady line of red dots, meaning that in certain areas there existed a direct continuity between the first century churches and the Baptists that eventually settled in America. Note that there's a large gray area marked the Dark Ages, where the trail of blood is associated with certain fringe groups such as the Paulicians and the Waldensians. Which brings me to this part of the chart, because the Paulicians were in fact a real historical branch of early Christianity. Not much is known about them for certain, but they originally popped up in Armenia in the 600s. Most scholars think that they probably ended up influencing the Bogomils, who emerged in Bulgaria in the 900s, and that the Bogomils, in turn, influenced the Cathars, who emerged in southern France in the 1100s. Also emerging in southern France in the 1100s were the Waldensians, a group of proto-Protestants that I mentioned in episode 3. So, according to the landmark hypothesis, the quote-unquote true church can be traced from the Paulicians in the Middle East all the way to the Waldensians in France, and then from there through the Anabaptists to the Baptists in America today. Now, it probably won't surprise you to learn that I don't agree with this hypothesis at all.
I would say that's kind of a long route to go around, intersecting with I'm not going to say a lot, but like different types of Christianity, in and out to make Baptists. I'm sure there's a less complicated chart that they also have that explains this. Not that chart was like overly complicated, but it was an older chart, guys. Like, give me a little bit of a break here. It wasn't the easiest to read chart, Some of those red dots, it was kind of like, are you really connecting that all the way down? Okay. There was a lot of other dots. He did a really good job explaining what the chart means. I'm just saying, I'm sure there's a more clear-cut chart. I'm actually looking at a chart right now that looks like it's a little bit more clear and decisive.
Nor do most religious scholars, nor do even most Baptists.
I'm ridiculous right now.
The general consensus is that the Paulicians, Bogomils, and Cathars probably practiced some sort of Gnosticism, and that therefore they do not relate to the Baptists at all. So let's now return to what we know about Baptists from verifiable history. Early on, there emerged two main types of Baptists: particular Baptists and general Baptists. Basically, particular Baptists are Calvinists, whereas general Baptists are not. And the reason why both types are able to coexist is because Baptists follow a congregationalist form of church government, meaning that each congregation is basically independent and can decide their own theology. However,
that makes a lot of sense. That actually makes so much sense in clarifying so much about Baptists that I know. Each church is like super independent. There's kind of like, hey, this is our church. This is what we do here. You want to do your thing, go to a different church. So, it seems a little less organized than some of the other ones, but I can see how it has a lot of benefits for like the preacher within each church, and also probably the congregation within each church is more just like specialized, just like the Instagram of churches.
However, that doesn't mean that they are the same as the Congregationalists, shown over here as part of the Reformed tradition. The Congregationalists practice infant baptism, whereas Baptists do not. The First Baptist congregation in what is today the U.S. was founded by Roger Williams in 1638. As I mentioned last time, most of the New England colonies had Congregationalism as their state religion, and therefore Baptists were not allowed. Because of this, Roger Williams helped establish what is now the state of Rhode Island, so that Baptists and other Christians could have a place where they could freely practice their faith. Eventually, the congregation that he started there built this building, which stands to this day and which is known as the First Baptist Church in America.
Wow, that is a cool building right there. It looks like it should have ended right around here, but then they're like, nah, we got to go higher. Bam, bam. Like this looks like it would be a good sized church if it just stops right around here. But they're like, nope, we got to get higher levels. We got to make sure this is the first one. It's got to be impressive. And so far, I will say, I'm impressed.
Stands to this day and which is known as the First Baptist Church in America. Prior to 1730, the Baptists were actually a fairly small group within American Christianity. However, that all changed with the First Great Awakening. By this point, some Christian leaders felt that Protestantism had become too intellectual. While they still felt that it was important to get one's theology right, which was the whole point of the Protestant Reformation in the first place, they also felt that Christianity at its core should be a religion of the heart. This idea had shown up in continental Europe a bit earlier as pietism, but hadn't really taken off.
All right, guys, we're going feelings over facts here. This we're officially doing. Guys, how do you feel about this in your heart of hearts, for real? Yeah, we know the history behind it. All blah blah blah. The history is cool, but how does this make you feel?
Off yet in the English-speaking world.
I'm sorry, Baptists. I'm making fun of you guys right now because I am also part of this group here. So, it's more like I'm making fun of myself here. Don't feel too bad because I know you guys are in your feelings.
But then came the First Great Awakening. Basically, the First Great Awakening can be seen as the start of what we today call evangelical Christianity. Unlike the more liturgical forms of Christianity, which focus more on communal rituals, evangelical Christianity is more focused on the individual conversion experience. In more recent times, this experience is often described as being born again. What happened during the First Great Awakening is that many preachers, such as Jonathan Edwards, started to preach more about the need for each person to repent of their sins and to receive the gift of salvation through belief in Jesus. This led many churches to become more interested in missionary work, which refers to trying to convince other people to become born again as well. Thus, among Baptists, the initial division that existed between particular Baptists and general Baptists became less important, with most Baptists unifying to become missionary Baptists, and those who did not support mission boards becoming known as primitive Baptists. Primitive Baptists are very much in the minority today, and the only primitive Baptist church that you're likely to have heard of is the infamous Westboro Baptist Church, the group known for picketing funerals and for promoting hatred towards gay people. However, let me be clear.
Did not expect that to show up, guys. I feel like, I don't know, based off the description, I'm like, well, they don't like just doing missionary work or like going around telling people about like you should convert to this, but then they immediately go around and say, yo, we hate with everything you stand for, and in their minds God hates you, like they know what they're talking about. That's wild.
In saying that they are by no means representative of all primitive Baptists. I simply mention them because they show up in the media quite a bit. Now, one of the results of the First Great Awakening is that Christianity really started to grow among Black Americans for the first time, both among those who were enslaved.
Well, that's not actually me, but I am a Black American.
In the South, as well as among free Blacks in the North. Most Black Americans thus ended up joining either the Baptist movement or the Methodist movement, which we'll get to in a bit. In the South, Black Baptists were originally required to have white ministers. However, after emancipation, the first Black-led churches started to form. Now, I should point out that because all Baptist congregations are technically independent, there's really no such thing as denominations in the Baptist tradition. Instead, Baptists have conventions, which are state-level or national-level organizations that individual congregations can affiliate with if they so choose. However, at the end of
that makes so much sense, guys. Again, the church I grew up in is a non-denominational church. It is still, I guess, considered like a Baptist church, but that is kind of like how they would explain it. And that's kind of how I would interpret it going to church services growing up. Like we weren't just reading chapter by chapter. This is the Bible. Here's the history of this page. It was more of, again, the preacher had a specific like message he wanted to talk that week. He would go and read maybe like one or two lines from a specific page of the Bible. He'd tell everybody to turn to this page. We're going to read from here to here, and he's going to read that part, and then he's going to make sure that that relates to the message he actually intended to go into the service with. Now, I'm not saying that that is like a necessarily bad thing, but it does. It really harks on that whole point that he made about it being more of a feeling and an individual relationship type of thing, because he's going to tell you about his experience. He's going to have people talk about or he's going to talk about experiences that he knows from other people, and he's going to bring that into the lesson for that week. But we are at no point going to be going over the entire Bible from beginning to front, or beginning to end. I'm guessing there are plenty of people within churches like the one that I grew up in that may not have fully read the entire Bible. Just based off the fact that you go in a church, you're learning the Bible piece by piece in different, here, there. But we're not like going through it, reading it, like, okay, here's the whole, the whole first, part of the Bible here. We're not going to read Genesis. We're not going to read Job. We're going to read a very specific part of it. That part is only going to take like maybe 2 minutes to read, but it's going to relate to the next hour that the preacher is going to want to talk about. So that's how I grew up in church. It really does feel like it was a lot more feelings over like the history of the church. Now, guys, with that being said, I got that out of the way. Now we are going to the fun part, which is, let's see about these symbols, guys. So these are conventions, so that actually makes sense of why some of these actually just look like convention logos here. Starting with this one here, the National Baptist Convention, USA. This one's actually kind of cool when you get up close to it. Like once you actually see it closer up and you see like these crowns and everything going here, I enjoy this one. I like this one. The American Baptist Churches USA, this one seeming like it's, again, this is hitting me with that cool church vibe, like the ones where the preachers are going to be wearing jeans. They're going to be, like they're going to be normal people here, but they have a lesson to teach you. The Southern Baptist Convention, I don't really have a problem with it. This one looks cool. This one's simple, but it looks cool. I wish this cross was a little less like, I don't know. I wish it was a little bit skinnier, I guess. Or like, I don't know. This, I don't really have a problem with it. I just personally wish this cross was a little bit more like traditional cross. Not a huge fan. I will say the National Association of Free Will Baptists. This just looks too plain. Throw a cross in there somewhere, guys, put a cross inside of one of these letters or something, just like the little symbol of the cross. You could put it in the, maybe like in the A, or like in the, throw a little thing here, make something out of there, have a little shadow of a cross going around, Convergence. I wouldn't know what this was if I first saw it. Like realistically, I wouldn't associate this being a cross. If these two white lines were maybe slightly closer together, then you could see it. But outside of that, I just don't. I don't see it. National Baptist Convention of America. This looks like a convention logo. This looks like something like for a TV. Like this looks like if this was like the NBC convention, for people who work at NBC studios. This looks like the patch that would be on their, like the shirt that they wear. So I'm not a huge fan of this one either. Venture Church Network. Okay, this just looks like a normal advertisement agency. Like I don't even get any Christian vibes about this one here. This one just looks straight up like they just like sell internet things to people. Like they'll sell your internet history to other internet providers so that they can give you better like ads and things. Um, this Baptist Bible Fellowship International. Again, I'm not like a huge fan. This looks like a fancy burger spot, and I feel like I've seen a place that looks similar to this before. Now, the National Miss, I'm assuming that's Mississippi Baptist Convention of America. They know what they're doing here. This one's pretty sweet. I wish it was a little bit easier to read, but this one looks sweet. I like this one. This one's good. Progressive National Baptist Convention. This one could be better. I wish this was a little bit easier to read here. That's like my biggest problem. It's like the difficulty on like the coloring that they put on this. It just makes it more difficult to read. American Baptist Association. I may have seen this one before. I wish there was a cross in there, guys. I mean, I know you put the Bible in there, but like it just like without knowing that it's a Bible, it's kind of just a normal book. Like if somebody said, "Oh, this is the American Book Association," people would also believe it. So that's why you got to throw a little cross in there just to like make sure people know the difference. Finally, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Not a huge fan of this one either, guys. I'm sorry, this one looks too much like a logo for like a child version of a TV network. Like you know how when like TV networks make their like child friendly hour or two and they like change up the like Nick Jr. This is like the CBS Junior logo here. Like if they had a CBS Junior, it would be it. This would be it. This is so sorry, Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Again, this is just how I feel as a Baptist. So let me know how you guys feel. Which one of these are your favorites below? Comment. Let me know. I like doing this part here. This is probably one of my favorite parts.
The day, they are actually quite similar to denominations, so I'm just going to use that word going forward. So the earliest still existing Black Baptist convention to be formed in the U.S. was the National Baptist Convention USA, established in 1895. Today, it is the largest historically Black church in America. However, in 1915, some churches split off to form the similarly named National Baptist Convention of America, or NBCA. And then in 1961, a different set of churches split off to form the Progressive National Baptist Convention, which Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a member of. Finally, in 1988, a group of churches split off from the NBCA to form the
Shout outs to Martin Luther King, by the way, guys. You can't not shout out Martin Luther King.
National Baptist Missionary Convention of America. So note that all four of these denominations have very similar sounding names, but don't get them confused because they are actually all different. As you might have guessed, the Progressive National Baptists are more progressive, whereas the other three tend to be more conservative. In terms of white American Baptists, most of the missionary Baptists eventually formed the Triennial Convention in 1814. However, because of disputes over slavery, this eventually split into the Northern Baptist Convention and the Southern Baptist Convention. Although, note that the Northern Convention continued to use the triennial name until 1907. Nowadays, the Northern Convention is known as the American Baptist Churches USA, and they tend to be more liberal, whereas the Southern Baptist Convention has kept its original name and tends to be more conservative. I should also...
Do you think they feel bad that they know that their side wanted to keep slavery? Like, it just seems a little weird. I would at least change the name. Be like, yeah, we were different people back then, so we got to change the name. I'm just saying, I would probably feel a little bit bad if I knew that the church I was going to was 100% the church that wanted slavery to still be around.
I'll point out that the Southern Baptist Convention is currently the largest Protestant denomination in the U.S., with approximately 14 million members. This is smaller than the number of Catholics in the U.S., which is around 70 million, But keep in mind that when all Protestant churches are combined, Protestants in the U.S. do outnumber Catholics. Now, besides the Southern Baptists and the other groups I've mentioned so far, there are still several more Baptist denominations to mention. For instance, there's the National Association of Free Will Baptists, Free Will Baptists being another name for general or non-Calvinist Baptists. Then there's the American Baptist Association, which is a landmark Baptist group that holds to the trail of blood explanation of Baptist origins that I mentioned above. But perhaps most important are the so-called independent Baptist groups, out of which the Baptist Bible Fellowship International is the largest. This is the denomination that Jerry Falwell was originally attached to. Falwell is known for having founded the Moral Majority, which during the 1980s grew to become a major political lobby group for evangelical Christians, and which laid the groundwork for right-wing Christians to have more influence at the national level, something that continues to this day. As I mentioned earlier, the northern-based American Baptist...
Oh, man, wait till I start doing my political videos, guys. You guys are going to be in such... You guys are going to love it. You know, you guys are going to love the political commentary that I have to say.
Churches went in a more liberal direction, whereas the Southern Baptists went in a more conservative direction. This led to the Conservative Baptist Association splitting off from the ABC in 1947 because they didn't like that the ABC was so liberal. Note that they recently changed their name to the Venture Church Network. However, in contrast, there's also the Cooperative Baptist Association that split off from the SBC because they didn't like that the SBC was so conservative. Finally, there's Converge, formerly known as the Baptist.
Now, follow me, guys, here, and I know this sounds like crazy logic, but what if some of those people from the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship just went to the American Baptist churches, and then people from the Venture Churches Network went to the Southern Baptist Convention? Now, is that too contradictory? Are they like, no, we still want to be part of the group that didn't like slavery, but we want to be more conservative? Meanwhile, the cooperative people are like, yo, we still want to be a part of the group that wanted slavery, but we think this is too conservative. What is happening?
Baptist General Conference, and even further back as the Swedish Baptist General Conference. They have their roots in the Scandinavian Free Churches that also produced the Evangelical Covenant Church and the Evangelical Free Church.
Wow.
Now, I should point out that although I've focused only on U.S. Baptists, there are in fact Baptists all over the world. However, since most of those churches were planted by American missionaries, I thought it was best to focus on the U.S. ones. The one exception to this are the Baptists in the U.K., who, like the American Baptists, can trace their origins all the way back to Smith and Hellis. Nowadays, most Baptists in the UK belong to a denomination called Baptists Together. It was also in the UK that the Seventh-day
Baptists Together is what you say, huh? Guys, I'm doing the judging thing here. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of this one, guys. It's just, it doesn't scream Christianity to me. Obviously, it literally has Baptists Together there, but I wouldn't associate that with like a church. I would be more like, oh, they're like this is like a thing that Baptists get. Like, this looks like the symbol to some type of event that a Baptist would have at a church. You know, where they're like, oh man, let's get a bunch of people together. Let's baptize a bunch of people at once, guys. Like, oh, this is going to be a great charity event. We're going to get lots of money for the church. What's the name of it? Baptists Together. That's how I feel about this symbol. Like, it's not like a horrible symbol or anything, but it just gives me more of the vibe of this is a one-time event that we're doing, or like maybe a yearly event versus like an actual congregation of people going to a church that has this symbol.
Baptists originated. I'll mention them again next time when I talk about the Adventists. Okay, let's now talk about the Methodists. Whereas the Baptists existed before the First Great Awakening, the Methodists did not. And in fact, it was because of the First Great Awakening that the Methodists were formed. The three big names associated with the founding of Methodism are John Wesley, his brother Charles Wesley, and their friend George Whitefield, all former
Whoa. Why they do Whitfield like this? Guys, what is happening? These two look very normal. They actually look, like brothers. Whoever painted this picture for Whitfield did him so dirty. I don't know what he did to that artist. I don't know what he did to you, but like you played him. Like, this is messed up. Even if he had a lazy eye or anything, like, come on, guy. Like, the head shape ain't even great. This hand shape not great. Like, y'all messed them all up. You guys got an amateur to do this one.
Anglicans. Like many denominational founders, they didn't initially set out to make a new denomination. It just sort of happened. During their youth, they started a group at Oxford called the Holy Club, in which members methodically strove to incorporate Christianity into every part of their life. Other students made fun of them and called them Methodists, a term that stuck and which later became the official name for the movement.
Really? You guys, like, they made fun of you by calling you Methodist, and now you guys were just like, you know what? I am a Methodist. That is actually hilarious. You're taking the word that was used against you and making it a term of endearment. I don't think that's ever happened before in history. Has anyone of any particular group, maybe like a set of people or anything, ever had a word that was used negatively against them and then they turned that into a term of endearment? I don't think that's ever happened in history.
1739, after having done missionary work in the Americas and having come into contact with the Moravians, whom I mentioned in episode 3, the trio started to preach throughout England in unconventional ways, including outside in the open air. This attracted many working class people who had not previously been regular churchgoers. While Whitfield's theology was Calvinist, John Wesley's was not. He emphasized that salvation was available to everyone, and in particular focused on something called the second work of grace. According to Methodist theology, the first work of grace is the initial conversion experience of being born again, whereas the second work of grace is the process by which a Christian is transformed into becoming a more perfect and holy person. Just a few years after John Wesley's death, the first two Methodist denominations were formed, one in the US and one in the UK. In the US, it was called the Methodist Episcopal Church, in order to distinguish it from the Episcopal Church, which had become independent from the Anglican Church just 10 years earlier. Eventually, the U.S. Methodists split in two over slavery, just like the Baptists did. But unlike the Baptists, the two groups eventually reunited in 1939, which is when they became known simply as the Methodist Church. Then in 1968, it merged with the Evangelical United Brethren Church to become the United Methodist Church, which is the main Methodist denomination in the U.S. today.
Now, that's the one that I've heard of the most, and I've seen this symbol the most. And speaking of, we're going over the symbols right now, guys. So this one is actually pretty cool. I've seen this one a lot of times. My only thing I would say about this, I wish this cross was actually a little bit thicker. It's kind of a thin cross, guys. Nothing against that, just saying. What is this? The Global Methodist Church? That one looks kind of cool. I gotta say, that one looks kind of cool. I will say it's giving me a little bit of Elden Ring themes, but only nerds know what Elden Ring even is. So if you're watching this page, you know what Elden Ring is. Congratulations. Also, you're not better than me in Elden Ring, so whatever. African Methodist Episcopal Church. Ugh. This looks cool. I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of the red, black, and green color schemes. Green is one of my favorite colors. Black is one of my favorite colors. And red is cool, it is what it is. I go between red and blue sometimes. This symbol itself, I like it. This is really cool to me. It's just everything about this is cool. Now, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, this is next level right here. This is something I would like I would get this tattooed. This is so cool because I'm a huge Zelda fan, and this is giving me Triforce vibes. It's also got the black outline of it. It's got the red, green, red, blue, and purple. That's different, but it's got a little bit of green. So it's kind of got the Zelda colors in it with the red, green, and blue. Because if you look, these are outlined in green. These two below here, and I'm sure that this had nothing to do with anything because this was made in 1821. But this is cool to me, just coincidentally. Methodist, Free Methodist Church. I I'm not gonna say it's bad. I'm not a huge fan of it because you can see a little bird there, and there's the flame and everything. If this was like, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but imagine if there was a Christian owned like gas company. That would be the perfect logo for them. Like if there was like a like not like natural gas guys, like the ones that you actually heat your house with, this would be a good logo for them. The Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, this one looks a little extreme. This is like one of those, like, again, this looks like a cool Christian place, or like the young Christians went in the 90s, like you see a Christian that still wore like jean shorts and had spiky hair. This looks like the symbol of the church he would go to, and he'd be like, yeah, this church is cool, man. Wesleyan Church, a little bit plain. This just looks like a company. I will just say this looks like a company. The Salvation Army, guys, you guys have dominated the market. I can't say anything bad about this one because I've went to the Salvation Army like as a kid with their summer programs. This logo is just dominated. I've seen so many Salvation Armies. I feel like I will say they could add a cross in here. They could have a small cross somewhere within the shield, and I feel like it would be a little bit more distinguishable and let you know that this is a Christian organization. Because I'm sure there's something people don't, I'm sure most people know that, but there's people out there who don't know that. But yeah, Salvation Army, you guys have oversaturated the market. I can't have any negative things to say. Methodist Church of GB. That's interesting. It's got the cross, but I will say I'm still not a huge fan of this one. I don't know why. It's just this one just isn't hitting as hard. I wish there was. I wish this one was more like the United Methodist Church's symbol, just a little bit more like it. I don't know. Something about I'm more seeing the four parts than I am the one cross. United Church of Canada, guys, this is a big improvement from the last one you guys had that just had maple leaves all over it. It's cool. It does look more like an African tribe symbol than it does like a Christian group. Like it's not screaming Christianity to me. I guess I'll say that. Uniting Church of Australia, interesting. I don't know what this bird is. Is this supposed to be like a canary or a cardinal or something? Like I don't know. Is it a cardinal? This looks like a One Piece logo. If anybody is familiar with the show One Piece, this looks like a pirate logo for one of the random pirate groups that would be around. Um, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it doesn't scream like you're about to go to a church right here. Again, this looks more like we're about to go to the open seas. If you have ate like a magical fruit that gives you superpowers, don't get into the water because you now cannot swim. And if people don't know about One Piece, then they are extremely confused about the last like few sentences I just said, and it sounds like I'm saying nonsense. If you are familiar with One Piece, you're like, wow, That still sounds like nonsense.
In fact, it is the second largest Protestant denomination in the U.S. after the Southern Baptists. However, recently it has experienced another schism, this time over the ordination of gay and lesbian clergy. In
Always.
2022, the more conservative Global Methodist Church was formed, and to date, at least 1,000 congregations have left the United Methodist Church to join it.
That makes sense on why their logo looks so much like the Elden Ring logo. I'm just saying, look at Elden Ring, look at this logo, and you'll be like, this was made in 2022. Some ideas were shared.
The split is still very fresh, so it's yet to be seen where all the chips will fall. Like the Baptists, Black American Methodists formed their own denominations early on. So in the early 1800s in the North, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, or AME, was formed in Philadelphia, and the AME Zion Church was formed in New York. To this day, they have remained separate, but as far as I can tell, there's not a lot of theological differences between the two. Then, after the Civil War, a third Black
Man, they're just being independent.
Methodist denomination was formed, this time in the South. It was originally called the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church, but nowadays is called the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Okay,
All right.
also
I like that name a little bit better. I feel like it's a little bit more, inclusive with the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
separating from the original Methodist denomination in the U.S. was the Wesleyan Church in 1843 and the Free Methodist Church in 1860. They are both aligned with the Holiness movement, which grew out of the Second and Third Great Awakenings, which I'll talk more about in future episodes. For now, I'll simply point out that these two Methodist denominations are, generally speaking, more conservative than the much larger United Methodist Church. In the UK, the main Methodist denomination was originally known as the Wesleyan Methodist Church. However, there were many smaller denominations that broke off from it to form independent denominations. However, in 1932, most of these merged back with the main denomination to form what is now simply called the Methodist Church of Great Britain. The well-known Salvation Army
that's what GB stands
denomination
for.
has its roots in British Methodism as well, but is aligned more with the Holiness movement. So again, I'll talk more about them in a future episode. However, I do want to mention two other churches that have strong connections to Methodism. First, there's the United Church of Canada, which is the largest Protestant denomination in Canada, which is where I'm from. It formed in 1925 from a merger between three Christian groups in Canada: the Methodists, Presbyterians, and Congregationalists. The Methodists were the largest of the three groups, which is why I've decided to include the United Church of Canada here with the Methodists, rather than with the Reformed churches. Being a Canadian, their logo is something that is immediately recognizable to me, since I see it a lot on church signs. What I didn't know until I started doing research for this video,
This logo looks cooler up, like the closer up you get, but I do still have the same comment for it as previously. It's cool, but it gives me more like, it looks like a symbol that you'd have for like a cool African village. Now, up close, there are a lot more like, I feel like there's more Christian specific things that you relate to with the bird, the bug, the burning bush, Alpha and Omega. So I do get that. I guess it's more like the color scheme, the shape, this cross in them. I will say it feels like there should be like an actual Christian cross somewhere in here, like maybe along these lines here or like somewhere in the middle. But I understand why this is the thing. It is also football shaped.
is that 3 of the 4 symbols represent the 3 traditions that merged back in 1925.
Oh,
The
that makes
dove
sense.
is a common symbol used by Methodists. The burning bush is a common symbol used by Presbyterians. And the open Bible represents the Congregationalists. The final symbol, the Alpha and the Omega, is a symbol for Jesus, and the 4 colors used in the design, white, red, yellow, and black, are colors often associated with Indigenous Canadians. In Australia, there is a similar church,
Oh.
known as the Uniting Church of Australia. It too formed from a merger between Congregationalists, Presbyterians, and Methodists. I'm not sure if the Methodists make up the largest component in this case, so maybe someone in the comments can let me know. Finally, I want to point out 2 more united churches that I've added to the chart, this time in the Anglican section, as in these 2 cases, it was the Anglicans who were the largest components. In 1927, Anglicans in India became independent as the Church of India, Burma, and Ceylon. However, after the country itself achieved independence, the Anglicans in South India merged with the Methodists, as well as with the South India United Church, which was itself a union of Congregationalists and Presbyterians. The new United Church was called the Church of South India, and to this day it is the largest Protestant denomination in South Asia. The Church of North India was formed later in 1970, but basically it too represents a merger of Anglicans, Methodists, Presbyterians, and Congregationalists. Okay, so that was a look at the Baptists and Methodists, as well as the First Great Awakening. Next time, we'll be covering the Second Great Awakening, which resulted in several new branches on the tree, including the Restorationists, the Latter-day Saints, the Adventists, and the Plymouth Brethren. Thanks for watching.
All right. Guys, another great video from UsefulCharts. Again, I came into this already having an idea of Baptists and Methodists and left out with more information. I'm sure I'm going to be even more informed when I check my comment section later on. And yeah, guys, this is a great series. I kind of feel sad that this series is like getting close to the end, you know? I do know that after this, I'm still going to be doing more religious related subjects on Sundays. That's just who I am, how I am, what I want to do with my channel. But obviously they won't always be Christian. There are other groups out there. I definitely want to make sure I get the Abrahamic religions first. So there's going to be videos on the history of Judaism. I believe, UsefulCharts actually has a video series about the Jewish denominations family tree. So I will be doing that series as well. I want to make sure to do something about the Muslim culture and history as well. And then after I'm done with those, then I guess we can just go on any other like monotheistic religions. And after that, we can start going into the multiple gods and, just religions that go across and don't just follow one particular god. But again, that's further down the line. I want to get these done first. Christianity, because that's the group I associate myself with. Judaism, and also the Muslim, just all together, just all 3 of those. I think it'll be really good to learn about. So, guys, if you thought that this was a good video, drop it down, hit that like button. If you liked what I said, you want to throw in more of your comments, throw them down in the comment section. I love reading the comments, guys, especially on these videos. I feel like I'm always just learning so much every time I read the comment section for these videos. And yeah, subscribe for more, because you never know what I'm going to do next, except I just told you what I was going to do next. But you don't know exactly what I'm going to say in those videos. So bam, there's your surprise. So yeah, guys, again, thank you for staying around this long. If you're listening to this part, you're just listening to me ramble on, and just trying to figure out a good actual point and how I feel about the end of this video. Again, I love the video. I think all these videos are great, but I had a lot of thoughts in it. You guys already heard those thoughts during the video, of course. But yeah, this is truly the part where I'm rambling. So guys, as always, I appreciate you. If you made it this far, I love you. If you don't, then hey, come here. Get a little closer. I love you. You're a good person. you're good. So yeah, as always, with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, and bye.